I hate writing.
Okay.
I hate writing. I've always hated writing, which is why I was a math teacher.
Okay.
I always loved to read, and I always enjoyed writing, because I often found that I could express myself a lot better in writing.
Did you enjoy math?
I hated math. I hated math in grammar school and high school. I fought math mentally for years. I just didn't get it.
I'm Mary Davis. I was born March 28th, 1951 in Troy, New York, and I grew up in Watervliet, New York.
I'm Bob Matthews. I'm 53 years old. I was born on December 8th, 1956, and I grew up and lived in Watervliet, New York. Watervliet, when I was growing up, was and is still a river town on the Hudson River. It's directly across the street, across the river from Troy, New York. Watervliet was always the poor cousin of Troy. It was always the industrial part of town. It was a working class industrial city that grew up with the Erie Canal, got a bunch of iron mills, steel mills, and factories. It became a factory town.
We lived with my grandmother. My mom and dad both worked, and it was a pretty typical household, I guess. My mom graduated high school. She graduated from business school. My dad did not graduate high school, and that's as far as they went formally.
Actually, my mom, because my mom was a frustrated teacher. She always wanted to be a teacher, and she couldn't. Because at the time when she graduated high school in 1937, it was in the heart of the Depression, and her family didn't have the money to immediately send her to college, and there was a great debate within her family and with her mom and dad about the wisdom of sending a woman or a young girl to college at the time, who's only going to get married and have babies, and it's going to be a waste of an education. She finally convinced her mom and dad that if they wouldn't send her to college to be a teacher, that they at least send her to what we would now call a community college to become a secretary and to get a degree. And I'm not even sure now if you'd call it a two-year degree. You'd probably call it a certificate as a secretary in secretarial science. So one of the first memories I have of reading is watching my father come home from work and watching him read as part of coming home.
My dad was always a reader.
Mm-hmm.
That I remember before I was in first grade that he would buy comic books at the local store, and I would sit in his lap, and I was drawn to the pictures. I was drawn to what the colors were on the page, and he would read me Superman, and I was just fascinated by that, because he would point out, this is what's going on, this is what this story or this picture means, and he would read the dialogue of the characters page by page. And that struck me, and I don't know when it was that I really started to do it on my own, but I always remember that before I went to grammar school, I started to read.
I graduated in 1969 from Catholic Central High School in Troy.
I then went to Catholic Central High School in Troy for 9th through 12th grade. They were really big on sentence structure. They were really big at graphing out sentences on a chalkboard and identifying the nouns, the adjectives, the verbs, how everything played together.
In general, we didn't have to do any long-term research papers or anything like that. High school, I actually can't remember doing a research paper until I was in college.
Was it from a young...
My sophomore year in high school. Okay. Every time our English teacher said, now tonight I want you to write a 3-paragraph or whatever, name the length, I would cringe because it would take me hours to write this thing. And I just didn't have the flair for it. No, I know my sophomore year English teacher always liked a lot of hyperbole and simile and I was like, what? I can't incorporate all of that into everything she asked me to write. So I think that knowing what I thought she wanted and what I was able to do, to my mind, were two different things. Yeah, Sister George in sophomore year, geometry, and you didn't mess with her, but she was good. All of a sudden I was like, wow, this is good stuff. When I was coming up through the grades, everybody would say, oh, older brothers and sisters, geometry is so tough. I studied every night. I couldn't make it through. Nana told me she failed geometry 3 times. I'm like, holy God, this is going to be awful. And I got in and I said, okay, I'm just going to study every night and do my best and do what I can do. And whatever she did, it was like, man, this is cool. I like this stuff. I don't know. I don't know what she did or how she did it. Whether it was her presentation, whether it was clarity, whether it was the way she just rode herd on all of us because we were always jockeying for position who'd get the problem done first, and she'd always be like, shut up back there. And I don't know, but she was good. And she's the one that I remember made it so easy. There's you're right or you're wrong. You don't have to have a lot of hyperbole or simile. It's just get the problem right, and that's it.
There was something way back in my childhood, early in my childhood, that sparked an interest. And I think it was the fact that my dad sat down with me and allowed me to take part in his ritual of reading the paper, and then it grew out from there. So I think in my case it was a case of learning or finding a love early in my life, and it just grew. And I think that was also true with writing, that I could find, it was something I could do that I was good at, and that I was recognized as being good at without having to stand up and do it in front of a crowd. I think in terms of other people, it's probably something like that. It's probably something that sparks them, because I think a lot of learning of that sort is based on an interest that grows into a passion. That for her, math and very concrete subjects were of greater interest. To me, it was always a little more of the esoteric that was a greater interest to me. We had similar experiences in terms of the resources at home and in school, because she went to the same school as I did. And so I think there would have to be something for those individuals that would just spark them and allow them to grow their passion.